Hi, everyone. Welcome to NJGAAE Presents. Today we are with Wendy Liscow. And before I do anything more, I'm going to have you introduce yourself.
I'm very excited to be here. I am Wendy Liscow, and a longtime lover of arts education. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you and learning even more about you, because our little chats already together have made me really excited to learn about what you've done so far and your future.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
So, okay. We have had some chats, as you all know who have tuned in weekly. I always talk to the guests beforehand, just to check in and get to know them. And the conversation I had with with Wendy, there was so much to talk about that it was hard to leave. So I want to first kind of get into, you are a winner of a governor's award this year, which is very exciting. So I want to talk about which award you won, and then how you felt when you were alerted that you won this.
Well, I'm receiving the 2021 Outstanding Lifetime Contribution to Arts Education Award, alongside my colleague Dale Schmid, who is retiring from the Department of Education. So that was really quite an honor to be alongside him. And I'll tell you, it's after watching the Governor Awards and seeing so many people receive very well-deserved awards, I was truly honored. And there was a little bit of an afterthought, like, lifetime, I'm not done yet. There's still more work to do. So, but it's really, really thrilling to be honored for what work I've done alongside many people so far.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, you're still so young. Like, you still have so many things to keep up with.
I love this girl.
So something I always love to ask people who have won these awards, because I had Lois Mofsey on, and we talked about his award when he won for his dance company. So I'm just very curious, how did it feel when you won? Because for me, it was career changing. And I imagine your career is already is very much on its way. It's very much going. But how has it been for you? How do you feel about it?
Well, it also came at a time when I was transitioning from a 17-year career in philanthropy at the Geraldine Dodge Foundation, and to know that that it was sort of honoring that work that I did there, as well as my relationships with other people. And I've spent a lot of time since hearing about the award, really just reconnecting with everybody. And quite frankly, there's so much work yet to be done. So much has been accomplished by the arts education community, but there is still some really important work to be done that is long time in coming, and some that is very brand new, unearthed by COVID and what's going on in our world every day. And so, I am also really excited to see it in a virtual setting, because that was so cool how they did that last year. And just to see how adaptive everybody has been in arts education. I've always thought, you can't keep arts educators down. You can't keep artists down. And they had the powerhouse of people who are committed to the meaningful work of teaching. There's no stopping us.
Absolutely. That's something that I've talked a lot about, and we've made it, guys. We every time that I've done a stream, it always comes back to how arts are just so important, and then how they build a community, and how we've survived, how our community has survived during this pandemic. And it's interesting that you bring it up, because I'd like your thoughts on it, and then what are some things which you've participated in with this transition?
Yeah, well, I have watched, I've been on the sidelines in some ways, watching the really powerful work that has come out of Arts Ed New Jersey, as they've, worked really hard to figure out with people in the field what it looks like to be September ready. which came earlier in many cases, and to give people advice. I'm on calls quite frequently with districts, and I know, and I will share that information with them, and or I'll see across, I'll be copied on something where I see that the information that was created to help people lean into this work and sort of have the tools in their hands to let administrators know that it is safe, to talk to parents, to talk to teachers, to make people feel like we can do this. And I guess I've also I've seen so many great virtual galas and celebrations and concerts and dances, and I've just been so impressed. And I also know that there are kids that don't have access to arts and even supplies right now, and it's important that we keep the good work going so that we make sure that everyone continues to be able to participate in arts, because quite frankly, the arts are going to be a critical tool to help lift people out of the real trauma that has been experienced by everybody at one level or another. Many people to much greater extremes, but it's been unnerving. And I think that the arts give us a window into our own experiences and reflect as a mirror to see other people and to create empathy and understanding.
It brings back humanity.
Yes, it does. We get back to it. So it's an opportunity there for people to sort of see the power. And what did everybody do every night for 10 hours? They watched art. They participated in art. They didn't get to be in community in the theater, but they were exposing themselves to art.
It was still
constantly
engaging with it. And something I found to be very interesting was in the beginning of quarantine, everyone was like, I found this new show, like it's amazing. And we were expanding our horizons while being stuck at home. And that's something I found very valuable, is that a lot of people learned new things and saw new cultures and experienced life through art. And that's such a valuable way of looking at how vital art has been.
Yeah. A lot of people have said that they have had audiences from around the country that they had never been able to reach before, and across the globe. And so now the challenge, the exciting challenge, is to sort of figure out how to keep that and expand that, and not sort of default to going backwards to what life was like before.
Yeah, I'm part of the NJ Thespians, and we do a so there's the International Thespian Festival, and then there's New Jersey Thespian Festival. And this year we had someone as our key speaker, or like two people as our key speaker, who were not in New Jersey, and they sent in a thing, and then the other one just spoke over Zoom. And it was so interesting because more people got to participate, and we got to have more voices and more people who wouldn't have been able to come and make it and wouldn't have been able to be there. And then they were there virtually. And that's just very, very valuable. Also, a comment to everyone in the crowd I forgot to mention, but of course, as always, please engage with us in the comments, and please send us questions, because I'm sure Wendy would love to answer them. But yes, Thespian Festival, having so many people be able to come, even though they aren't in New Jersey and they aren't even in the country sometimes.
Are you staying in touch with any of those people?
I don't know if our organization is. Me personally, I'm not. I wish. That would be neat. But yeah, and that's also something that Arts at NJ is doing, and that's also what a lot of organizations are doing, because they have the means.
Right.
And then this is the only time when it seems the only way we're getting a surplus of money right now as far as arts go is we don't have to actually be there. And so that's the only type of money that we're getting surplus on. But other than that, we're losing money.
So you're graduating, so you will not be going back to high school.
No.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know what it's gonna be like when it's back. I don't know. It was weird because it started happening my junior year, and I know a lot of kids because I'm directing a play this year. And so I am spending a lot of time with these freshmen who I'm directing, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know what high school's like, not virtual. Like, I just don't. Without masks, without the new schedule, without all of that." And it's just so amazing because it's really changed the dynamic of high school. The community's still there though, which is interesting. Like you still talk to everyone and engage.
Right. I wonder if the theater crowd has stuck together more than other crowds. Do you know? At least with your.
Um, at my school, I know that some people have separated from the groups, but generally speaking, yeah, I think everyone stayed together, and then we've come back together. We were separate, we were disparate at one point, and then we came back together when we started doing showcases and when we started doing these events, which I don't know, shout out to my school. We have a showcase next weekend on the 28th. We are doing Backwards Broadway, which is singing songs from musicals, which are the opposite gender of you. So I will be singing My Freeze Ray from Dr. Horrible Sing Along blog, and I'll be singing Sweet Transvestite from from Rocky Horror Picture Show. So if you want to see that,
Oh.
please tune in.
It'll
I'll be
be
running.
live. It'll be on video here, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I do. You'll have to put that in the banner or something so we can see to know to do that.
I'll definitely be something also that's been valuable, which is just personally valuable, but also shout out to everyone who is a member of a high school or something like that. You can reach out to us. We're doing Spring Ahead program and we're doing Arts in Bloom program. And so send in your events that you're doing virtually, the events you're doing in person, and we will post them on our channel, post them on our Instagram so that we spread it more and keep building the community.
That's great. That is so beautiful. Yeah, because I'm sure everybody's missing all those May showers of concerts and performances, and
my school just had a chorus concert, and it was like the first one they've had in person, and it went very well. Yeah. Oh, also we have a comment from Dennis. He said, "Wendy is my hero."
You're my hero.
A clap from Priscilla.
Hey, Priscilla.
So I want to talk about I want to get really like in your career now. So where did your arts journey start?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because I'm thinking about the Governor's Awards and who gets honored, I thought nobody wants to go back to when I was in high school, but I think it's as I thought about that and how much high school theater helped me survive. I spent a lot of time as a little kid making things. I guess you might have thought I would have been a painter or a visual artist. I had tons of businesses. I sewed, I made stuffed animals and had a business around that. I had a sand sculpture terrarium business. I was an entrepreneur, but they were all pretty much lonely tasks. I would be alone for hours on end. And it really wasn't until middle school that I found theater, not at school, but in an after-school program. And I found my community. I found a place, and it was an opportunity where I got to write and sing and dance and perform and sew the costumes, make the set, doing all of that. and there was a place for everybody. And I spent years sort of splitting my time between theater making, and I also thought I was going to be Jane Goodall, and so I was studying animal behavior and volunteering at the EPA and at a research lab, and also tutoring because I loved education.
You were very,
So
very active.
I
You still are.
kept busy. I kept busy. And then when I went to college for natural resources. I was gonna pursue wildlife management, and my first semester really was not having a good time with physics, and said, I'm just gonna take one theater class, just one theater class. And then
there we go.
Yeah, I just didn't turn back. Spent a lot of time. I worked in professional at Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, and then I moved to the Pennsylvania Stage Company, and then when I moved to New Jersey, I was working for the George Street Playhouse, and I was associate artistic director, which gave me the opportunity to be a resident director, work with the arts education company with Susan Kerner there. I was a dramaturg. I directed 1 to 2 shows a year, and spent a lot of time working with writers and producing cabarets and all kinds of wonderful things for 12 and a half years, and until I moved to the Theater Alliance, and then I went into philanthropy, and now as I was in philanthropy, I had the really great opportunity to start working with so many amazing arts education leaders and artists and arts people. I got to know New Jersey in a really deep way. And man, we have such a beautiful community here. It's really special.
You have such a thriving arts community, and that's something that I was aware of by living in here. I've lived here my whole life, but it didn't really hit me until I started here and I saw everyone and how much passion there was, and how there were ample people coming out and saying arts is so important, arts is amazing, and here is why. And we have a governor who supports the arts education, and that's very important. And it's just having all of these layers of interaction really makes the arts as robust as it is here.
Also, well, how did you find it? Because you started, you say you come from agriculture country, right?
Yes. So I'll get to how I found it in a moment. I have some comments of just more comments talking about how amazing you are. So we have a woohoo from Dennis, and then we have a congratulations to you on winning this amazing achievement award, because you have achieved amazing things, and especially done a lot of things for arts education. And then we have a couple of Wendy is amazing and a true leader of the arts. So I have been an actor since I was 6, and then I was aggressively pursuing that. And then in freshman year, I kind of fell out of love with the art of performing theater. And it was weird, and I didn't really know necessarily why. I think it was the dynamic that was put forth that I didn't specifically enjoy. Just the not the community, but the competition was something that I didn't feel confident in my abilities enough to constantly be in that competition for that. And so after that, I kind of, as I affectionately put it in college essays, I had a passion-sized hole in my heart. And so I went into that summer, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And then I went to a film camp and just fell head over heels with the art of filmmaking. And so I've been doing that for about 4 years. I've directed about, I think, like 17 films now, a little bit more than that. And I have many planned for this summer. I think like 3 or 4 planned for this summer. And I won the Governor's Award last year for film, and that was what really like solidified it for me. Was I was like, I have I have the talent to back it up now, and I think that's what I've heard from a lot of people is they knew what they were good at before they won the Governor's Award. But then when it happened, they were like, yes, this is like I'm getting that outside recognition for it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. You're going to have to back up for me, though, a little bit, just because you said you were aggressively pursuing theater from 6 years
Yes.
old. Like, what did
So
that look like? Were you putting on shows in your backyard and
so I went
dressing up
to
the dog?
I went to a tiny Christian school, and so
Okay.
we had a theater department that was mainly just like one guy and then the kids, and that was that. And so I was like a lead um in my first lead role was 4th grade, and then I did that, but I just was always singing, and I was taking voice lessons, and I was performing all the time, and I was just being very expressive. And we have videos of me when I was a little kid when my mom would go like, oh, make this face or make that emotion, and I would just do it. And so I've always been rather expressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's exactly what I want for every kid. I want
Mhm.
everyone to feel what you feel and not have it be tamped down by whatever tamps it down.
Mhm.
Man, that's what I'm going to do before the end of my lifetime. Is I'm going to try to figure out a way to link arms with people to
Mm.
make sure that that happens.
Because a childhood shouldn't be one where your creativity is dampened.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I find so this is something that I haven't talked about much on this, but I find that you'll have very good insight on this when when people have talked to when you've talked to people like students specifically, and they talk about that I want to do this theater or I want to do filmmaking or I want to do art, but my parents said that that's not realistic. What do you think about having an arts career? What do you think about the realism of that?
Yeah, I was told that too. That I should. Well, I did get a teaching degree, and I was planning on teaching theater.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, and you and I talked about this earlier. I was always in trouble in my school because I was always fighting for more money and with
Mm-hmm.
the athletics department and whatever. And I did get in trouble a lot. I was in the principal's office a lot. and,
It's like, it's a serious thing, but also you were fighting for equality of funds. Like it wasn't.
It was serious, and yeah, and I was, quite frankly, I was young. I was 4 years older than my kids. I was teaching high school theater, and they were great too. And then I just decided, I really did want to, spend a summer getting some professional experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to intern at the Cincinnati Playhouse, which is my hometown in Cincinnati. And before I knew it, I was working there. Second year intern, full time, sort of helping to run the intern company, running an improv company. And before I knew it, I just was decided I needed to produce and direct, and so there was no coming back from that. I forgot.
But did you want to come back? That's the question.
To teaching, school, to education. Yeah, I think that's why I'm in arts education right now. I really have great admiration for educators. And that whole saying, those who can't teach makes me want to punch people, because I think, educators are laying it out every day, and when and as a theater director, I understand that they are performers.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you have to have a persona that you bring into that classroom that is ready and able to engage students and take risks every day. They have to, how much work they have to do just to leave behind the lives and be present in the classroom for their kids. Mm-hmm. So I think I found home in a real way when I started getting back into theater education. And the community of people, who in the nonprofit sector who have dedicated their lives to that. I mean, and a lot of them are on this call right now. They bring their lives to it, and they make to bring meaning, and they do it often without being gratitude. Oh my God, when I think about awards that go to even governor's awards or other awards when students are getting accolades, I realize there's an adult behind them who's helped them to see it and shape it if it's right there in front of me. Like you, I mean, it's there. I'm sure your teachers, they're just shaping, they're just sort of teaching you how to let it go, bring it back in, control it, and just master it. But we're lucky to have great arts educators in our state, and and we're learning too that there's a lot of work that we have to do in arts education in terms of Arts Ed New Jersey's worked really hard in terms of making sure that every kid has access, and then now it's really how to make sure if they have access, are they participating, and is that just a numbers game, and is that just or is it opportunities to make sure that our content that we're teaching as we start looking at our new curriculum with the new arts education standards, is it culturally relevant? Is it responsive? Is it trauma and healing centered informed? I mean, there's so much to do yet. I did.
Yeah, but it was all right. We got the gist of it. But
can you hear me now?
What's interesting is that is something I want to mention, the numbers game that you mentioned. I think that us as can you hear me? Are you all right? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Okay, we're back at it. So I want to mention the numbers game that you mentioned. I think something that humans do in general, we forget that every number is a person. And that happens a lot in education. That's been happening a lot during this pandemic. And it happens a lot when we see, oh, this is how many people don't have arts education. That is like hundreds of children's lives where they do not have the opportunity to pursue this artistic merit, this artistic thing, and they may be missing the opportunity. And one of the reasons that I find all the advocates that I've worked with throughout this year so awe-inspiring is because that does make a huge difference. That one theater class which that kid took once, it makes a big difference. Or that those 8 theater classes and that all those clubs which that kid did, it makes so much difference.
Right.
No matter how much you do, even if you do a little or a bunch, it'll make a difference.
Yeah, and it's all of them too. I mean, I guess I started, my story was in visual arts, and I did love my visual arts. But and we do really well in New Jersey, especially around music education and visual arts education. Less so in the theater and dance, although because of the focus on it, we're doing better. But if I hadn't found theater, I would have, what did you say? I would have had a
passion-sized hole in your heart.
Yeah, I surely would.
It never would have clicked. That's something that I hope for everyone, is that their passions and their goals, they click. Something that I also haven't talked about much is I find that there is such thing as a career soulmate. you know, and similarly how people they found that they say that they found their soulmate, they found their one, and I clicked with them. There is jobs and careers that click with people, you know, arts education, and that clicked with you. And for me, filmmaking and directing has clicked with me. And it's also, people have described it as your flow state, ikigai, which I don't know if you know about.
I don't know about ikigai.
Ikigai, let me look up the exact definition. There it is. Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. And it says ikigai is a reason for being, a Japanese concept referring to having a direction or purpose in life, providing a sense of fulfillment, and towards which the person may take actions, giving them satisfaction and a sense of meaning. And there's like, I can put this up here, and it's a combination of what do you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what are you good at, and then they combine to become passion, mission, profession, and vocation. And when all of those are put together, it becomes ikigai.
I'm going to be Googling that.
Absolutely. I highly recommend it. Also, we have a comment from Alyssa Lee, and she says, arts education is critical, which is very true.
Hey, Alicia.
But yes, ikigai is something, and then Priscilla loves that. But it's something that I've thought a lot about. My teacher who introduced it to me, she's our gifted and talented program teacher, and then she is also an English teacher, and she said that she found her ikigai in education, and she loves also what she gets to teach, and the ability to be one-on-one with these students and engage with them and encourage their creativity. And I think a big part of most people's ikigai is the community, which just brings us back to the lesson that's always taught over and over and over again about arts education, that it is a community, and that is so very important, and that is critical, as Alicia said.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, and I've been in with a couple groups lately, and we've been talking about the power of community and our need as humans, you know, to be in relationship. And we were talking a little bit too about how important it is to have that sort of a permeable lens to that, so that people can get in and out. And that I always found that theater in particular, and the arts, I like to think in general, sort of are magnets for any outsiders. Anybody who wants to be in the arts can find their place in the arts. You know, and especially that's why I like theater, because there's performing, there's directing, there's backstage, there's stage management, marketing. That's the thing we have to do as, I think, artists, is get out of our own way and let people understand that it's a powerful career, and that, you know, you can commit your life to being an artist, and you can work. You can have a career. My daughter went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and their opening day was, you know, she was very fortunate to be there, and they said, don't worry, parents, they're going to work. These kids are going to work. And then they designed the program so that they weren't just in school, but they had Fridays off to be in studio, to make films, or get up, you know, they were able to learn their craft and make art. Alicia, I'm thinking about you right now, because, you know, she's talking about, you know, working with the new art standards and making sure that we lift up creation, that students have to be able to make things. Yes, they need to be able to replicate great art and discover things, but it's that creation that I think is the lifeblood.
So I have two comments, because I really wanted to bring up that there is so many layers to the theater. Like you mentioned earlier when you were talking about how you had the opportunity to explore all over the place with theater. You had the opportunity to engage with all the aspects of it. And I've had that too, and I think I'm a rounder person because of it. I found what I love. Pardon my shaky camera. I found what I love. I love directing and I love writing. But I got the opportunity to engage with every part of theater, so I found it. And then also so I understand my team. And that's something that one builds community, but then also adds to it in general, just adds to the life of all of it. And then I had another comment, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, I'll jump in here too, and then maybe you can remember it, because I was thinking about this too. We do a lot of things in our life, and I as I said, I spent a lot of time in the theater, but then I spent even a longer time in philanthropy and sort of pursuing other things alongside that, and it wasn't really until I was able to step back I realized that I've been using those skills. I've been using my director and producing skills in philanthropy. I've been using my dramaturg. I was a dramaturg, a play doctor, where I could look at text and try to see where, talk to a writer, learn how to let them see things without sort of pointing my finger. Everything that I guess there's a saying, everything you learn in kindergarten you learn in life, you learned in kindergarten. I think everything I learned in the theater, I've been applying since in one way or another. And I think we have to remember that. Families need to remember that. If maybe my father wouldn't have said, that's not a reasonable thing to do with your life. If he knew that it was a skill that was going to make me more powerful. I mean, they talk about soft skills and hard skills, and people have heard me say this before, but I was at a conference where a Microsoft woman was on the panel, and she said, soft skills, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for creatives. That's what we need in the future of our country, is those soft skills, creativity, social emotional strength. So we just, we need to change that narrative.
So for those who may not know, I want to get into that very much so. But for those who may not know, can you define like some examples of what a soft skill is versus a hard skill?
Oh, I think so. A hard skill would be the things like your academics, your math, the things that you often will be putting in that college, your SATs, the things that you need for your resume there. And then the soft skills are the things that are around social emotional learning, your EI, your emotional intelligence. And in this country, emotional intelligence isn't often valued. And that's
general.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Zana, power skills. This is something. So what was so interesting to me about you bringing that up is that I think a lot of people who aren't we're just preaching to the choir, but I think a lot of people who aren't in arts education forget that, one, you don't have to do it for the rest of your life. So you don't have to be a theater kid for the rest of your life. It's just part of your experience. And then if you are, that's wonderful. And if you aren't, that's wonderful. It's about supporting it. And then also, it's about building skills. And that's something we've talked about. That's something that I've talked about last week during when I had Kira on and we were talking about SEL, which I highly recommend for those who have not gotten the opportunity to tune in. It was super interesting. We got really into the nitty-gritty of SEL and had a very in-depth discussion about what it means to intake content and intake art and how we teach our students to do that. But these skills that we're learning are giving students opportunities to do other things and to do what we're teaching them specifically. And to produce, which is what I wanted to mention to you, is that I think also people forget that arts education is production. Arts education does make money. Arts education does produce people who are, of course, passionate, but also productive. And they create and they have income and they circulate economy, and that's something that people forget.
And to step out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Keep thinking about a couple improv. I did improv in after college and ran a company, but I've also watched colleagues and friends do improv with high school students and middle school students, and it takes courage to show up to an improv
Absolutely.
class, right? And then if you just watch kids like get their wings, they flap, they try it. They might even fall down flat, but if they're in the right space, before you know it, they are just like flying. I've been watching eagle cam lately, and watching some eagles fledge, and it's just I was thinking a lot about how we do that in the arts. We
And
have
how
to really,
metaphorical it is, yeah.
and it's terrifying. It is terrifying, especially after you've been, if you're lucky enough to be fed by, have your food chewed up for you. But yeah, it's scary, and you learn to sort of try things, and you
Mm-hmm.
find where your strength is. It's there, but that's what a great educator and director, teacher really helps you do, is to not cover that up anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. We're talking to the prior, the singing to the choir here, but
Yeah, but this brings back what I said about that these numbers are people. Everyone is a person. And so and so when we are engaging with arts education and teaching these people these skills, these are people who are learning skills. Like I like these are tangible skills that are useful. I've known people who have gone into arts education, then after they Alessia. Did someone say choir? Um um
there's a girl choir.
but these are tangible skills and these are people, and I've known people who they're not even affiliated with arts anymore, but they have an appreciation for it and they have a love for it because it's what raised them in a sense. It is what helped them to have the ability to stand up in front of a jury and say this person's guilty or this person's um not guilty, and then they it's given them the opportunity to have um good bedside manner. Even it's given them the opportunity to engage with others, and that brings in back to emotional intelligence. Um I'd love your opinion on emotional intelligence. I'd love your thoughts on it because I know there's people who do not believe it exists, and there are people, which is insane. Yeah. And then there's people who don't value it. And for me, I find it extraordinarily valuable. Clearly it exists. Those people are, I don't know what's going on, but um, I find it extraordinarily valuable. So I don't know. I just like your opinion on it. I'd like your discussion of it, and everyone in the chat too.
Yeah,
Emotional
chat
intelligence.
people, tell me, do you know anybody? I don't surround myself with anybody who doesn't believe in emotional intelligence.
It's not necessarily that I don't surround myself. It's
Uh,
just there's people
who don't value it, or they don't believe it.
they don't. I don't think that they believe its value, and then they also don't believe that it exists. They just think that these people are just nicer or whatever. Like it's just like, you know, that's how people feel about
Yeah. Lately I have been trying not to trouble myself too much with um, things that are so far out of my scope of understanding.
it. Hmm.
And I almost just have been leaning into the complexity of humans,
Hmm.
and 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 trying um, to not um, actually, I think owning that complexity that two
Mhm.
truths can be true.
Mhm.
I mean, that's, if
Yes,
anything, that
absolutely.
we've seen a lot of. I've had too many conversations where um, it's as if we live in a different
Mhm.
universe, and what I'm trying to sort of lean into lately is just to find the narrow bridge where we can agree upon things, um, and begin to do the work from there.
Mm.
And um, I I would probably be looking for some examples where we can agree upon where emotional intelligence has served
Mhm.
them, either with their family or, a child, or in a business situation. Brené Brown talks a lot about shame, and she talks a lot about people not really being comfortable taking risks, and I'm forgetting the word right now. And then
What's the
uh,
name of the author again?
Brené Brown,
Brene Brown.
and she says, in her new
Heard of
book,
that. Heard of
Daring to Lead, and she does talk a lot about talking with audiences about being vulnerable. And that's, her book's a lot about the power of being vulnerable, and that you can't
that.
really have courage without being vulnerable.
Mhm.
Tells a story in the book about being in front of a whole bunch of military leaders who combat, and they're like, vulnerability, I'm not vulnerable. I would never see vulnerability as being part of courage. And as
Mhm.
she sort of walks them through it, they realize, oh my God, of course I had to be vulnerable in order
Mhm.
to be able to find courage, because you can't have courage without the vulnerability
Mhm.
first. um,
Mhm.
and to watch them, allow themselves to
To
realize that they
engage with
have
the
that
idea that they're
emotional,
vulnerable.
yes,
Mm.
sort of opens up them, and they see actually the power of in that moment going from a place of vulnerability to courage, where you have to act to defend somebody you love, or what country, whatever. And this happens in any profession. And it's an interesting book. I suggest you dig into it, because she
Yeah,
really does
definitely.
look at that concept of, in a nation that really doesn't value vulnerability,
Mhm.
weakness. It's perceived as weakness.
Mhm.
Um, she sort
I
of
think if it's
changes.
wielded correctly, even if it's not wielded correctly, I think those who engage with it. I remember when I was growing up in theater, and there would be people who would cry openly, and it's uncomfortable and it's hard. And I don't know what it was like for them, but for the outsider's perspective, because you don't know what to do. And I think that's something that us as a society have not engaged with properly. When something's uncomfortable, or when something's like a little scary, or something that's difficult, we kind of stray away from it instead of going, okay, this is difficult, this is hard, this is emotionally challenging. We're going to engage with it. We're going to go in and we're going to understand why. And I think there's a lot of people just not meditating on why.
Right.
Mhm.
And I do think too, it's a time in our country where it's been long in coming, where we need to start thinking about, we can't always be going through our own lens, what we know. We have to know that people experience the world in very different ways. And if you don't, just start to begin to own that, and then start educating yourself and start thinking about
Mhm.
it, um, we will live in the same world that our parents lived in, and the world has moved on. So
Mhm.
we have an important responsibility, I think, to keep educating ourselves about other cultures, other ways of thinking, other ways of being. Um, some cultures, vulnerability will show up in a different way, or
Mhm.
so we just, that's why I sort of got stuck by the EI question, um, because I value it, but that doesn't mean it needs to be valued by everybody else
Mhm.
in the same way,
Mhm.
and it will show up
Which is a
differently.
valuable way of looking at it.
Right. Right.
Mhm. We have a comment from my mother, actually. She said, being a peacemaker, and then she also put a link to Brene Brown's TED Talk, Power of Vulnerability. So if you guys would like to check that out.
Thank you, Mom.
um, so I think you mentioned that learning other people, that they have a different understanding of vulnerability possibly in other cultures. And I think something that's interesting is that our culture is very contradictory. We say that it is valuable to be strong and hide your emotions, yet it is also valuable to learn others, yet learning others requires you to not hide your emotions. Learning others requires you to engage with their emotions. And so it's just interesting that the arts seems to have has always had a consistent narrative of, we are people, I'm a person and you're a person, and we're going to talk about people's stories, whether it be in a strictly realistic way or in a melodramatic way, and at the end of the day it'll have a human story to it. And that's something that holds to this day in arts education and theater, and that's something which you have engaged with, and I imagine everyone on this call has engaged with and has taught and has made valuable for many other people.
It's really why I think I was drawn to the theater, is the storytelling and the narrative. I mean, I love novels and entering into different worlds to understand. And I just always thought that the theater was so powerful when it allows people to sort of walk into another world and sort of watch a circumstance and not necessarily own it. It doesn't have to hit it over the head. I think that's probably why the Crucible is such a powerful piece. Because you can look at that Puritan behavior and the relationships and how they unfold and think, oh, well, that doesn't happen today. And then you find yourself, oh,
But it does.
I guess it is happening. And Shakespeare, so you have the opportunity to move it, update it. But, I think many of the productions I've seen where it's not updated, it allows you to see things that you might not be able to see if you're reading an article on it, because your defenses would kick in, and I guess I just love the sitting in community, and yet you're alone when you're in the theater. I just had an epiphany. It sort of combines my sense of community and my many years of being alone all the time, with my art making. You get to do both.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jocelyn. I just had a lifetime epiphany.
Oh, well, that's our goal now, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's why we have these discussions, and that's wonderful. That's what happens to me almost weekly. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I would love to open the floor to any questions from the audience that we have for Wendy. And then if there aren't any questions, I'm so thankful for all the work you've done. And I'd love to know if you have any just general advice for general artists, then also specifically student artists, because I find that is something which clearly you're very connected with, which is very valuable and wonderful, and we need more people connected with young people. But I just would love your opinion on and your advice.
Right. I wonder if I have anything that has been said to people, but I hope they've heard it before. But you sort of touched on this earlier. But I think find a mentor if you can. Find your people and stick with them, and don't stop, and don't get stubborn either. There are multiple ways to get to your goals. And I don't know. I guess this is part of my personality. When somebody told me I couldn't do something, I was like,
You want to do it even more.
"Oh, yeah." Yeah, that's the 3-year-old in me. Um, and and I think you just have to continue to follow that.
It's
And
balancing having a plan versus being stuck with a plan.
say more about that. I like that.
So for me, I'm a filmmaker, and so my plan is to I have landmarks, I have these things which I'd like to do. I don't know, put this out there as like a thing. I've been saying it for a while, but I want to have a theatrically produced film by 30.
Mhm.
Anyway, but I I have these blocks that I have planned. And then everything else I'm figuring out as I go. I'm planned up to September. I'm not necessarily sure what's going to happen after that. And I know there's people who have longer plans than that. I know there's people who have shorter plans than that. And it's just about making a plan that's manageable for you and not getting stuck in it. So, like you mentioned, when you went to college, you went into something that you thought you would love and then you didn't. And that's all right. And that's all right
Right,
to shift your plan and not get stuck with it.
right. If you have the privilege to do that, that's,
Hmm.
and I think part of what I learned as a director too is that I I know exactly in my head what that play was going to be
Hmm.
before I, got in the first day of rehearsal.
Hmm.
And I did that so that I could throw it all out
It's
and
true.
listen to the artists,
Hmm.
who were embodying it. I
Hmm.
still need to know that, yeah, you needed to be able to exit in order to say that line and for that cue.
Hmm.
But how I ended up getting there um, mattered less. And
Hmm.
in fact, it was more honest and true and meaningful when
Hmm.
it was done with, sort of being responsive to other people's ideas.
We are getting into a whole other topic about directing that I could go on years about. I love directing. I love the idea that directing isn't just you, that you are directing just you're just taking everyone's ideas and making them into a manageable package, which is the art that you're producing. But it's not you. It's not just you. And that's something that I have seen a lot with younger directors that they forget. I'm in a directing course, and for me, my favorite part of directing these students has been talking to them and going, okay, here are like the 8 outfits that we have access to. These are the ones which are my favorite. Which ones are your favorite? Do you feel comfortable in that? Asking questions which make it a group activity is so valuable and brings us back to the community.
And I was going to like drop a huge bomb at 3 minutes left, but in terms of power, where does power
Absolutely.
get held? And
Mhm.
um, and I think sometimes we are in this country where it's a dominant power culture frame where the director should sit in their chair with their hot mascot or whatever the director chair pointing. And yes, I'm sure that needs to be done in some ways because time is money, time is money. But uh, I definitely believe that the power is in all the creatives, the
So
writer.
absolutely, I completely
Mhm.
agree with that. And a quote before we end with some questions, but a quote from the real Alexander Hamilton, who was not, you know, the best guy in the world, but he still had valuable insights and was still a very intelligent man. But a quote from him, which represents federalism, but it's a whole other thing. But he says, "Give all the power to the many, they will oppress the few. Give all the power to the few, they will oppress the many." Which I find is valuable for what you were just mentioning, is that if everyone holds power, then we can all work at it together and we all have stake in it.
Mhm.
When but if only a couple people have power, that is a fragile system, and it is a less enjoyable system to be a part of. And that brings us back to arts education and arts in general. It is a group activity. It is a community where we all should and do have power.
Yes. And I'm really looking forward to the 22nd when we celebrate people wielding that power at the governor's
Yes,
award. It's
absolutely.
22nd.
Woo!
5
And
o'clock.
so, my alarm just went off. So with that, are there any questions before we start to really close down, before we do our closing statements from anyone? I'll look at the chat. And if any pop up, we'll go back to it. But with that, I do want to, like Wendy just promoted, please everyone come to the ceremony on the 22nd for the Governor's Awards. Come early. We're doing an hour and a half early for like beforehand. So starting at 3:30, we will be having a red carpet where we interview people who have won this year, people who have won in the past. We're going to have some performances before the ceremony. And so we'll really get to engage with the people who are wielding the power. And that's just I love that. Thank you so much, Wendy. We're passing around life realizations here.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, and also I just got a comment from someone who's running our Facebook right now, and they said congratulations on 1 year, because I just did 1 year at this organization as of the 11th. So it's very exciting.
Congratulations. You should sing us out.
Sing us out?
Mm-hmm.
What song?
Well, something you're going to be performing in the next week.
Okay. Okay. I hear you shiver with Anne Tissa.